let me bring in Paul before we go to the audience questions. In addition to serving as chair of the chamber, you've been president of the board of the Real Estate Finance Association, Paul, a trade group for the commercial real estate industry, an industry not known as being a leader in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Would you share some of the work that took place during your tenure, and what are some of the lessons that we can apply to other industries?
Sure, Mitra. But before I do that, I just want to acknowledge all that has been said. I just want to acknowledge that this is our collective problem. It's pervasive, it's pernicious, and we need seismic cultural change and accountability. I do think conversations like this are important, but only if and when they lead to accountable action. So I just want to acknowledge all that has been said and reinforce it with an exclamation mark. So I was president of the board of the Real Estate Finance Association, which has about 700 members. And the year before I was the president of it, or a couple of years before, we developed a nominating and governance committee. There were of a board of 36. There were 5 women and 1 person of color, and we led an effort to diversify it. Now, what's important is that people said, well, you will never diversify it because you won't find the people in the commercial real estate industry. And that's because people were looking inside and not outside. And people were looking at people they knew versus people they might not have known or been comfortable with. So to fast forward, currently, 3 years later, we have a board of 36, and 45% of that board is women, 30% are of color. When we're in the room, the conversations, you can just imagine, are very different. Our membership has grown. Our corporate sponsorships have grown if one needs to make the business case for it. But what I want to make is the real case of change for it. What we've done now, in addition to having a board that is different and more diverse, we measure what we're doing. So how many of the panels are diverse? How many of our members are diverse? How much of the staff is diverse? We adopted, remarkably, among all of the groups within the Greater Boston Real Estate Board, and now we're one of 5 divisions, they've all adopted it, a statement of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, a statement is words. It doesn't mean anything unless you adhere to it and you measure it and you count it. And that's what we have been doing. And we also recognize that to continue to foster diversity, you need 2 things. You need to bring more people in. So we've developed an emerging leaders program, which is 250 of our 700 plus members. And we developed a mentorship program to mentor younger members of the industry and bring them up. We also have organized with all of the, I think there's 7 other real estate trade groups in the region, a DEI summit. I think this next week will be the 2nd or 3rd annual of those. And we brought the leaders of those groups together to talk about what we can collectively do. For example, how we can share in mentoring. It's not one trade group versus this is a social issue, this is a community issue, this is a country issue. And so we need to deal with it collectively. And we've tried to break down the barriers of even the different groups. And in addition to that, our programming has focused on these issues as well. So we measure ourselves, we hold ourselves accountable. And of all of the groups I've been involved in, some of the most powerful conversations recently have been with this group. I just want to pivot though and talk about something else that was said here, which is Andrew mentioned healthcare. And I just want to touch on that for a moment because the diversity in healthcare. You may also know another group that I'm involved with is St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. I'm vice chair of the National Board of Directors. And many years ago, when that was founded, opened its doors in 1962. It's in Memphis, Tennessee. And it was placed in Memphis, Tennessee by Danny Thomas, and my father actually had the privilege of being one of the founding directors with him. I mention it because everyone knows it is maybe the largest healthcare nonprofit in the country currently. But when it opened its doors to treat kids with cancer and other catastrophic diseases, one of the guiding principles was that no one would be charged. All care would be provided free of care, as well as lodging and transportation. And it was put in the Mid-South because it would be the first fully integrated hospital in the Mid-South, because when Danny Thomas was traveling the country, he read an article about how a white driver had hit a black child on a bike, and he took him to 2 hospitals that rejected him. And on the way to the third hospital, this child died. And Danny Thomas kept that article, and the pledge he made to himself was to do what he, as one person, could do to make a bold step for integration against racism. And fast forward, and a leading publication just 10 years ago, a study came out, and only St. Jude could have done this, where it showed that the cure rate of children of all races is equal when you remove the variables of the socioeconomic and racial socioeconomic variables. And we could only done that because there is no cost associated with care. So that's a bold move that one person took that changed at least one region in this country. I offer that because we're talking about action. And that's an action. And I think when we come to the latter part of the program, you're going to ask us, what are the bold actions? That was a bold action, and one inspiring one that one person could do that all these years later has made a difference. So thank you.
I challenge all of my business colleagues on this call to, show us your goods. And I'm putting mine out and we'll be embarrassed by it. But that's how we're going to improve it, by measuring it.
Mitra, I just want to add, first of all, I agree with Marianne in terms of making sure our own houses are in Marcy, our own houses are in order, and making sure that the people we have in our organizations are getting the training and mentoring so they can be the strongest that they can be. But the second thing is we are going to hire eventually. And so I'm a partner now on the executive committee of Nutter. We still have the opportunity to talk to those folks, know who they are. And so when we're hiring, they'll know us and we'll know them. So this should not stop simply because there's not an act to be taken immediately to hire. The act is to be known and be heard and get them to know us and maybe help them develop. So I think the question actually sort of shakes me a bit. I know it's meant in a good way, but that can't be a reason not to keep the intensity on this effort.